Dieter Leyssen je arhitekta i urbani sociolog. Suosnivač arhitektonskog studija ACT koji radi pod platformom 51 N4E koja je nastala u Belgiji. Crnogorskoj javnosti su vjerovatno najviše poznati po Skenderbeg trgu u Tirani, gdje također imaju svoj studio. Njihov pristup arhitekturi je jako suptilan. Vole biti uključeni u objekte koji transformišu, tako da ih često nastane i neko vrijeme pokušavaju otkriti koji bi bili zapravo alati njihove intervencije. Jako im je bitan životni vijek njihovih objekata, tako da u budućnosti mogu ugostiti različite funkcije, a da se objekat zapravo mora minimalno adaptirati. Bilo ih je pravo zadovoljstvo ugostiti u Podgorici. Dieter Leyssen, 51 N4E.
Hi Dieter,
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good.
This is your first time in Podgorica, Montenegro.
Yes.
You are coming from a studio that is established in Brisel, in Belgium, that is 51 and 4E, that is like coordinates for Brisel. And also you have one other studio at Tirana, Albania. I'm not sure that you are the right person to be asked that question, but can you give us your insight, the perspective? What are the main differences, and also what are the similarities between practicing architecture in Belgium or Albania?
Maybe to start, 51M4E is actually increasingly a collection of practices, so different studios in different localities. We have Studio Podcast. Indeed, there is also the collaboration and a separate firm in Albania. That's a way to be an architect nowadays, because questions on space and on architecture, they're very broad and they're different depending on the locality. So we tried to be a sort of agile and versatile structure to also allow to be active and to be responding in the best way possible to those localities. Me, as part of the collection, I don't work in the studio in Albania, but I can say that for a long time, having worked at 51M4E, there is a very strong sort of learning practice on the Belgian team and the team in Tirana. The projects that are done in Tirana, they can be sometimes a little bit more experimental than the ones done in Belgium, where regulation often is much higher, this is interesting to test out some of the architectural to test out some architectures in Albania to learn from it, but also vice versa, yes, where there are other techniques possible in Belgium. So we through publications, through discussions internally, we foster that learning from the two localities.
We are talking about Skenderbeg Square in the center of Tirana, of course.
But also TID. TID was actually a prototype of a metropolitan hybrid, where you have a very flexible structure that can be apartments, can be a hotel, can also be, now it's a hotel, but actually the structure allows for different kinds of uses. And that type of development, actually, we're now very much investigating in Brussels, using existing structures to reprogram them. The Victoria Tower is a good example of a structure that is actually in a good shape, even though it's 30 to 40 years old.
Yes.
So there are parallels. There are parallels to draw between Tirana and Brussels.
In 51 and 4E, you have three independent but three interconnected studios. One is ACT, also there is a CAST and a ROOT. You are a co-founder and partner in ACT. Can you describe that whole platform a little bit further?
This grew out of the expansion of architecture as a discipline. At a certain point, we found ourselves doing a lot of work within an architectural mission, going from project definition to participation to really feasibility studies, but we weren't compensated for it. It was all part of the architectural mission. So we started to think, how can we make a more appropriate structure where we can do all that work, because we think it's important to investigate properly before you start to build. And that's how this came up as a solution, where the additional advantage is that I, for instance, as a quite young architect, I could step in and construct together with my colleagues another type of practice. So initially, I think it came really from a questioning of the discipline and the role of the architect in projects. And now it's also a very nice tool to work between generations and to have a say in a company, which I think makes it also more future-proof on the long term. Yes. For instance, now we have younger colleagues really being interested in making things, like constructing, reusing materials, and this is again something growing out of this out of this platform logic, where you give space and you test out things, and then maybe they stabilize, maybe not, but there is the openness to experiment.
Okay, can you tell us something about the architectural policies in Belgium?
Yes, I think 51M4E is also a product of a quite interesting and innovative policy structure that was founded in the 90s, which is called the Bouwmeester, or the state architect, where the politicians and policymakers decided to install an independent role separate from the administrations and the political level, that would make the link between the architects and the designers and the government and the public authorities who wanted to do a project. This is a figure that is renewed every 4 years, so it's somebody who comes from practice, take up a role, and then goes back to practice very often. And he or she is responsible for organizing competitions. And the competitions were of such kind that they didn't require an entire project developed until sketch design level, but actually more a design attitude, a proposal where you could sense that it would be a match or not with the public authority that would do the project or would finance the project. Right. In that sense, it was, I think, a bit lighter than competitions that you see nowadays, where you actually have to already design a lot, spend a lot of time, spend a lot of money. There it was more, really the attitude. And 51M4E, in the beginning of that procedure, won a lot of those competitions, and in that sense could build a portfolio with projects such as C-Mine, that are quite big projects for, at that time, a young firm. And it's still actually being expanded. So now the different regions in Belgium have their state architect. Also, some cities have it, so that city competitions, they are run by the city state architect, or city architect it is then. And that's a formula that is actually a very positive evolution in architectural policies to rise the quality level.
Architectural building. How not to demolish the building? That's a huge question for you. Mm-hmm. Why is that so important?
We made a publication with that title about a quite controversial project, the World Trade Center in the northern quarter of Brussels. It's a project that was built in the 60s and was going to be redesigned 4 years ago, and we also applied for the competition of the state architect of Brussels. And for us came at a time where, due to reflections on environmental footprint, on the need to work with the scarcity that is there now of materials, to also investigate more circular building methods. So we embarked on the project with our office, with a French partner called Leyssen, but also with a very traditional architecture office called Jaspers Eyers. We used it actually as a way to learn what is possible, to look for the limits of what is possible. In some way we won and we failed at the same time. We didn't do a fully circular renovation of the World Trade Center, but we did learn a lot of the possibilities thanks to that project that now we are implementing in other projects such as Victoria or such as Recast, another program line that we're developing to transform office buildings built in the 60s and 70s into new structures or new programs. So that's I think a question that is both at the heart of many of us as architects, but also on the political level. It comes at the right time because there is a sense of scarcity, while we have a lot of built material, like our territory is fully built. So the question of to use the existing structures for purposes that are now needed is a quite evident one. So I think that question should be at the heart of many of us spatial practitioners.
What was at the beginning of that process of reusing of World Trade Center in Brisel? Was that a competition, or maybe you, maybe sometimes you are initiating that kind of
It was a competition, but the particularity there was that we also, before winning the competition, we also moved our offices into the old tower.
For a year and a half.
Yes, yeah. So the particularity there was that when we won it, we were designing the future of the building while being in the building, which
inside.
is from inside of the building, which was a once in a lifetime experience, I think, because you could really, you could not just by analyzing, by going on site visits to see the qualities, but just by being there every day. We also in that sense learned to the quality of that, and also try to implement that sometimes in new projects where we do a temporal office for a certain amount of time in a space, so that we can propose different kind of proposals.
There was a lot of different activities regarding the program in that specific project. What was the architectural tools that you were used for developing something from office space to, let's say, residential space?
So the reflections on changeability of the architecture. So a lot was investigated on the sections. In that particular project, we decided to for this time go for a sort of zebra scheme where you mix office housing. But actually the section is built in such a way that is also transformable. So you could also swap again the office into housing and vice versa. So it's mainly also about proportions, about the course, whether or not to close an elevator or to open it at a certain level. So it is, we as architects actually have the tools to make very flexible buildings so that they are more future-proof for a longer time. And I think that's what we also learned in doing the ZIN or the WTC project.
Of course, you as a studio, you have to be in some kind of financial sustainability status. So what was the economic model for that kind of like year and a half researching of that building for your practice, for your office?
Well, we were working on multiple projects at the same time, so the practice just continued. We were just there, and we were actually, since when we won the competition, we were also fairly compensated for it. So the economic model was not different than before. I think what you could say about us as a group of practices, and what I said before about defining better the missions and the practice than that does the mission, this is of course an economical logic also behind it, so that you don't do work that you're not compensated for, but you do because you find it interesting and you want to do it. The different studios and the different programs help doing that. To give an example, we work a lot on also infrastructure projects where we do from the beginning the definition of the scenarios of where roads should be, where mobility should be, etc. And then when it becomes concrete in, for instance, the architecture of a bus stop, the other studio takes over and designs until the detail of the canopy and all of the water and electricity connections. So we sort of we have handovers within the structure of 51 and 4E, which allows for knowledge to be kept, but also different strengths to be used in the different phases of a project.
Of course. In that project, in Brisel on World Trade Center, like we already said, you were there for 1.5 years. When is the right time to let go that kind of project? When you can say, okay, now you are on your own.
What do you mean?
I mean like that. When is the moment when you need to pull back and to put the whole project to live on her own? In a sense that you don't have to be like mentor.
In that sense,
you are still engaged.
Yeah, we are still somehow engaged because we have our office quite near, but at the same time, it's also the owner who had to start the renovation, so we had to leave. I think because we have our office in that district and because we're very strongly linked to the debate in Brussels as well, we are still very much connected to that project. So we also feel a responsibility that it's well maintained. But of course, we will not do the maintenance of that project. It's the client, it's the owners, it's the tenant that will do it.
What do you think? What is the lifespan of that project on that terms that you established?
Should go over 100 years for sure. Yeah. I think
because of
too many projects have been built in the 60s and 70s with not really a future vision in mind, because resources were endless. There was a sort of modernist hope in an entire internal future. Now the conditions are different, so I hope the new projects that we do, they're being developed with a minimal 100-year lifespan, and the reuse projects, you have to deal with what is there. So if a structure allows for extra 50 years by making additions, by changing it, that's already an important step to make. If you look at the shrinking of CO2 that we have to realize, every extra year that we don't put more CO2 in the air is a win. So to keep structures for 20 to 30 to 50 years, we're gonna perhaps make it possible.
Peter, thank you so much. I hope that we will find some time to continue our conversation.
Yes, thank you.
Days of Architecture. Thank you.